For this episode of Coffee with Closers, I'm sitting down with Nicolas Vandenberghe, the founder and CEO of Chili Piper. Nicolas is a serial entrepreneur. He started and sold 3 tech companies prior to starting his 2 new ventures. He's a student of neuroscience and how people buy and sell things. Stay tuned for my conversation with Nicolas, where he shares practical advice for entrepreneurs and business leaders on productivity and sales leadership.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Coffee with Closers, where business leaders share insights on how to build businesses from the ground up and best practices for innovating in their industry.
Hey Nicolas, I'm super excited to have you join me for this episode of Coffee with Closers.
My pleasure. Happy to be here.
Every entrepreneur has an amazing story of how they overcame obstacles to become an entrepreneur. I'm sure you have something very similar to share. So can you tell our audience a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, I'll tell from the beginning. So I grew up in the south of France, in Marseille, and this is not the place where you meet a lot of entrepreneurs. You know, it's none of that. But yet I was always full of initiative. So looking back, I had it in me to always try new things. So I started traveling on my own when I was 14. When I was 17, I started selling newspapers and make money on the side that way. But I had no idea that there was this thing called entrepreneurship where you could start a company. And then I was fortunate to do well in school and go to École Polytechnique, which is this prestigious science school. And I was trained, to become. A lot of the École Polytechnique people become civil servants, so they become corporate people. So that was a natural path. But fortunately for me, a few years later, I decided to go to Stanford Business School. I applied a few times, and finally they accepted me. At the time, I still didn't know that there was an option to be an entrepreneur. I just wanted to travel. I just wanted to be in California. And so I landed in California, met my classmates, and one of them became famous later. His name is Steve Jurvetson, and he invited the famous people to talk to us. And one of the first ones was Steve Jobs. So now we're back in the mid-90s, and Steve Jobs is actually doing this company called Next, and the joke is that it's going next to nowhere, because he was really struggling, and he sat on the floor and started telling the story of his life and his most recent company. And that's when it hit me. I thought, this is what I want to be when I grow up. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to just come up with ideas, start companies. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But if it works, then there are millions of people using your product. And I just thought it was amazing. So my plans changed completely. I decided to stay in the Bay Area. And as soon as I could, I started a company. So I did. And ironically, my first company, I ended up being a partner with John Sculley, the very guy who had fired Steve Jobs. A complete coincidence that I met into John Sculley. And I did my first company was consumer software in 1995. And from there, it's just stuck with me. This is what I love doing. The possibility to create something from scratch and influence the life of your customers, the life of your employees is something that completely fascinates me. So that's what happened. And the funny thing is that you think that eventually things get easier and easier, but it doesn't, right? So I'm a repeat entrepreneur, and the most recent company, I started a company in sales tech. So right now it's Chili Piper. I had actually several successful exits, but very often I double down on my new company. So I take all the money and put it back into the new company. So I did that, and there was a time when I started Chili Piper, my first idea was to automate data capture for CRM. So I built a solution to automate data capture for CRM. And then I found out there were 2 competitors, one called Implicit and one called RelateIQ. They had the same idea, that data capture, RelateIQ call it relationship intelligence. they thought that was critical in the world of sales to let salespeople do their job of selling and not bother them with data capture, like putting into. So I built this intelligence system that goes into your email or your contacts and find the emails and contacts that should be in the CRM and automatically put all these contacts and information in the CRM. It started well. We started growing. We had 450 companies as customers, and next thing, Salesforce bought Implicit, which is one of the competitors. So I thought that's the trouble. And then Mark Benioff spent $400 million to buy RelateIQ, the other competitor. And then I had some angel investors say, Nicolas, you screwed. You understand that they spent $450 million to go after your business. And so that was definitely a moment of despair. Because of course I couldn't get any funding. Everybody said, you're dead. And I actually sold my house, the house in the Hamptons from my previous exits, and liquidated everything. So I'm going to double down and just continue doing it. And I'll find something else. So we pivoted, we changed completely, and we said, what other problems do salespeople have? We talked to a lot of sales leaders. We found that the automation of scheduling and all the things that have to happen around scheduling is actually a big pain point, and we restarted the company to do that, and that became Chili Piper, and now here we are. We've just raised a B round of 33 million. We've passed 100 employees. It's all on the right tracks.
That's a crazy, amazing story. So obviously you had 3 successful exits. You've also held some fairly large roles in big organizations and negotiated billions of dollars in contract values. So for all the things you've accomplished, obviously coming over here to the States and studying at Stanford, so you've done a whole lot, right? Of all the things you've accomplished, what's the one thing that you're super proud of?
So first of all, people complain about aging. My life keeps getting better. Mm-hmm. And the thing I'm most proud of is actually what I'm doing now. Obviously, I'm super proud of my family, but we're talking about professionally. Right now, I'm amazed by the journey we're having at Chili Piper. We started the company completely distributed. People call it remote, but we don't think of it remote. We call it distributed because and the idea was that there's talent everywhere in the world, and we should find talent everywhere in the world, not in a place where we decide to put a company. And then these people whom we hire should be able to be free to travel wherever they want. So actually, we hired a guy in northern England who told me, as soon as you give me the offer, I'm moving to Colombia because that's where I want to live. Mm-hmm. And so that was the theory that we say we should hire smart people wherever they are and let them live wherever they are. And we started the company. And at the beginning, it was just 5 of us, We were in Ukraine, Brooklyn, Romania, and Kosovo, and now the company is 107 people, in 93 cities and 23 countries, and that's what I'm most proud of. My accomplishment is this team of people from all these diverse backgrounds work together, collaborate together, helping each other, and it's just an amazing journey. I'm very proud of it.
So obviously, you mentioned about when you were getting started with Chili Piper, you actually had a little bit of trouble because there were competitors that were being acquired by, obviously, Salesforce. And every time Salesforce infused cash, they either just make those companies go big or they're like Yahoo stories, like they never get anywhere. But you've built this company, you have this one trick pony, which is essentially automating the meetings, right? Like automating meeting booking and all of those things. But we're also seeing this trend where companies that used to promote you, like Outreach.io, and even I believe early days, even HubSpot was promoting you as well. They're all starting to introduce the meeting booking as part of their application. So what sort of things are you doing, or what entrepreneurs can do when their trusted partners aren't really giving them an opportunity to reach their customers through that partnership that they had once before?
So it is the case that more and more the tech industry is moving towards frenemies, right? Friends and enemies. So we are friends and yet we are enemies. It turned out that it's one of the big lessons from what happened to me with Salesforce is that the world is not black and white. There's many shades of gray. And it was actually a mistake for me to completely pivot when this Salesforce thing happened, because there's many shades of gray that I could benefited from. So specifically to your point, Outreach, HubSpot, Salesloft actually introducing their own scheduling solutions. So you think they compete with us, but ours is much. We cover a lot more things that need to happen around the meeting. Mostly we cover the qualification piece, we cover the routing, assigning to the right people, automating what should happen in Salesforce. So the new scheduling capabilities that HubSpot and Outreach and Salesforce are introducing actually not competing with us, because they are the use cases that we did not cover. So that's what I mean by shades of gray. So there are all sorts of use cases, and if you look at the detail of the use case, you turn out that even though it sounds like the same thing, it's actually not the same thing, right? And it's not the same people who are going to buy for the same reason. So that's what's happening. That's how we can be frenemies, because we mostly friends and not so much enemies. So we just announced an integration with HubSpot CRM, and it's on a super strong start, because a lot of HubSpot customers need what we do, which is this, we call it concierge, the ability to take an inbound meeting request and qualify, route it, and book it in real time. And that's a huge need, and HubSpot customers need it, and HubSpot understand that. So we are working together to make it happen, right, to deliver value to the customers.
So obviously you've started in the consumer software space, and now you're in the sales tech space, and sales enablement tools are just growing rapidly. You've probably seen, from the early 90s to where we are today, there's been a lot of changes happen in the entire space, right? I mean, I think Salesforce wasn't even around when early days when you're probably getting into the space. Yeah. So basically, you've seen all that industry changes. So how has your approach on sales and marketing evolved over the years as you've been in this sales tech space?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that people often overlook that because the way to acquire a customer has completely changed, obviously between now and the mid-90s, but even it keeps changing, it keeps evolving. And so it feels like it's constantly in school, actually. There's completely new things to learn on how to acquire customers. Back in the day, if you can believe it, when I started my first company, it was software, but the bandwidth wasn't strong enough to sell online, so we actually shipped CDs and DVDs and sold it at Walmart, right? So it was a very different model. It was very traditional with advertising in magazines. PR was very critical, and then distribution was very critical. So getting a deal with Best Buy and Walmart was a key part of our business. Nowadays, on online, social is becoming such a huge factor in the go-to-market strategies of every company. Product recommendations, advocacy, all these new. I wouldn't say new, because advocacy always matter, but they've become increasingly important. So the answer to your question is, at any time, I keep an eye on what's happening, and I'm trying new things and learning, and of course talking to people, to experts, and hearing from them the lessons of how things are going in the marketplace.
So obviously, from my little knowledge of you, you're basically a student of human psychology and learning how people think and learning how people buy and sell, all of those things. And I think you said one of the books that you often read is Neuroeconomics, Decision Science, and the Brain. I think a former professor of NYU written that book. So obviously you're in this space of helping people sell better, helping people buy better. So tell me a little bit about what you've been seeing as some sort of a foundational things that people should know about how people go about making purchase decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. So the very idea of neuroeconomics is to study how people make decisions. And of course, in sales, that's our holy grail. Right? We want to influence somebody to make a decision. So when that discipline started, so it was started by Paul Glimcher, the idea of merging neuroscience, like brain scanning and brain analysis, and with economics, and the term neuroeconomics. And by the way, now he's changed it. I'm not sure why, but he wants to call it the science of decision making more simply. So yes, I thought that was fascinating, and I started looking at it. And the experiments go in many directions. Some of them are not applicable to the world of sales. Some of them are. One of the most profound discovery, I think, for me in the world of sales is something that they called mentalizing, or theory of mind. So something struck me very early on in my career, and that is that there are many, many different types of personalities that are successful in sales. So there is cliche of a salesperson being an outgoing, a person who is going to entertain you and take you to dinner. But when you look at the top performers, very often they introvert, or shy, or they come in all sorts of colors, salespeople. And so that's a bit disturbing, because you see there's got to be something that explains the success of salespeople. And what is that? So I've been focused on this question for a long time. Say, what does it take to be a top salesperson? And often you hear people say, well, what it takes is empathy, when people who empathize. And so what I found in neuroscience, in this book in particular, is the fact that there's a different brain capability that looks a lot like empathy, but is very different. It's called mentalizing. So empathy is the contagion of emotion. So if I see you sad, I empathize, and then become sad myself, because and it's a contagion. So if I see you happy, I empathize, and I'm happy with you. It's actually probably the least useful brain trait in sales, because if people are pissed off or sad, you don't want to get pissed off or sad, right? But what they discovered is that there's another brain capability called mentalizing, which is about sensing what makes people move and act. So being able to get a sense, I guess you could call it intuitively, because it's non-conscious, of what it is that the person, what it is that's going to move the person, and that's mentalizing. So, for example, I give the example of Donald Trump. Nobody would think that he's great at empathizing, right? He doesn't seem to care much about empathy, and yet everybody would agree that he's a very strong salesperson. If he's measured by influence, he's been able to influence a lot of people. And what he has is this mentalizing capability. He understands what to say that is going to move people, and again, at an intuitive level. So the neuroscience found that these two brain capabilities are actually two completely separate neural networks. So it's different parts of the brain that actually are involved in the processing of the information. So if I have this empathy and get sad when you're sad, it's not the same part of the brain that if I'm doing a good job reading what's going to move you and acting on it. I found there's a book that I love called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. I'm sure you've heard of it. It talks about sales negotiation and hostage negotiation with the FBI, and he used the term tactical empathy. And if you go deeper into what he means by that, he actually means mentalizing. He means this capacity to get into the brain of the other, or the shoes of the other, and understand how this person thinks. And that's why you call it tactical, because if somebody is sad, you have to read that the person is sad, but not get sad yourself, right? And so the idea of tactical. So it's the same. It's the same capability that he discovered. So that's not something that I test when I interview salespeople. So right now we said 107 people. Half of our team is salespeople, and we interview. I don't know. I must give 5 to 10 interviews a week, because we're recruiting so many salespeople, and always go and measure that ability to, this mentalizing skill, the ability to understand, for the other person to understand what would make me move as a prospect and how to influence me. So
how do you practically test for that, though, when you're especially trying to hire a sales rep?
Yeah, I do a role play, and I watch for these things. See, the typical bad way to do a role play is to say, "Hey, I'm Joe Block from Microsoft. I have an amazing cloud solution. We cheaper and faster than AWS. can I have a demo with you? Because you don't even know if I use cloud, you don't even know, right? And the right way to do is to do this tactical empathy, where I say, hey, so the discovery part is the key part, right? So I am understanding that you're using cloud solutions. Yeah, I can ask you which ones, right? Can I ask you what's working, what's not working is currently. Tell me more about what's not working. What I needed, how would it be, right? And you're starting to understand what people have in mind and what they're interested in, and what would move them. And then, of course, you can, if your product is the right product, you can say, well, that's perfect, because if that's what you would like, that's what I have to offer to you. So it's in practice, it's actually quite simple, but it's amazing that it's not better known and better practiced, right? So I still get candidates sent to me that do a very poor job, and so they should have been filtered out by the other executives who are on the path to recruiting, but they're not, because it's not. Even though we at Chili Piper practicing it, it's not yet well understood, this concept of mentalizing and how it's the key talent of salespeople.
Yeah, and I think I've heard this phrase used a lot. I mean, people make decisions emotionally and they justify with the logic, and it's really true in the B2B space as well. But oftentimes on the B2B space, I think if you follow like a Sandler methodology or any sort of sales methodology, they talk about how do you ask questions to get someone's deeper need, not just the surface level needs, right? Hey, we want to increase sales. Or well, what do you mean increase sales? But what exactly is the increasing sales going to do to your business or to you personally? How does that going to impact you personally, and how is that going to benefit you personally? Some of those questions are very hard to ask, right? And I don't know if you have any practical advice on people how to get a little bit deeper into that personal need, more than just the surface level need. Well, I know you need this software. I understand you have some struggle or technical difficulties, but not just addressing for the surface level technical needs.
Yeah, I think the sales methodologies like Sandler, as you pointed out, they are built on the right foundations, which the idea of identifying deeper what the customer problem is. Their problem is a bit too formula driven, right? So asking what the impact and like if you get a Sandler call, Sandler train rep, they all sound the same, and I think, Jesus, not that Sandler thing again,
They say pattern interrupt, but they all are the same pattern.
That's right, exactly. That's right. They go with the pattern, say, oh no, not that. And the brain is very quick at detecting pattern and so what we train our reps on at Chili Piper is more of the general approach on doing it, not specifically the questions and how to phrase the questions right now, and like the thing and how would that impact you? There's a million other ways to do it. In the book, Never Split the Difference, he used the term black swan, which has been used in other places in a completely different context. But the black swan is that he gives a few examples with terrorists where there's one thing that they really care about, right? And if you find that thing, it's a black swan because it's so hard to find. But if you find that thing, then you have a great shot at turning them around because you found the thing that they care about. So it's exactly what we train our salespeople and say, look, ask questions, you discovery, but you're looking for the black swan. You're looking for that thing that really matters to the prospect and is really going to move them. So that's the advice. Say, think of it in terms of I'm looking for a black swan, that thing that they really care about. And with practice, it comes. Practice,
yeah. And obviously, you've built and sold multiple companies, almost 3 companies. Now you're building 2 separate companies, and you have had a lot of experience interacting with so many people. And now you're overseeing almost 106 people at one company alone. So you've seen a lot of leaders, you've seen a lot of management, right? From all the things that you've done and the interactions that you had with people, what are some of the characteristics that you've noticed with the top players and the top leaders you've had in your organizations?
So one thing that I'm very attached to is the importance of details. So I've found that the best leaders actually understand the details. So I'm very insistent on all my VPs and executives to really understand the details of what they do. It goes a long way because you have a lot more credibility and a lot more power in helping others. So that's I would say the first characteristic is that I've had experience. I'll talk about the positive experience. I can talk about the negative experience of some of these executives who come from, for example, IBM. IBM back in the day was known to produce these misfitted executives. I remember one company that I was involved with. The VC said we need to change the CEO, and they found this person from IBM who was a big shot at IBM in the space. So you think, oh my God, look, this person knows everybody and everything. She'll be amazing as CEO. She came on board. And the way you operate at IBM is not by knowing the detail, it's by managing up and down and around, right? So like what you report that you think. So she was really good at managing up and around, but she had no ideas what should happen. And as a result, the company lost direction and tanked. Mm-hmm. So that's the thing. And I know there are a lot of theories about leaders being inspiring or being the most recent. What was the most recent trend about being
empowering?
Yeah, well, empowering is one, but there was one where like being critical but positive. I think that the first requirement for a leader is to know what the hell you're doing. Like if you're a leader of engineering, you need to know how to write software. You need to understand what technologies do. If you're a leader in sales, you need to know how a sales process works and so on. Then at Chili Pepper, we put a lot of emphasis on helping. So I put the job of a leader or a manager in 3 buckets. One is hiring, coaching, firing. The other one is design the tools and processes that your team needs to use. And the third one is orchestration. So make sure that the work is dispatched to the right people. And different circumstances have different emphasis. But the most important piece, one of the most important pieces is the people aspect. And the way to do hiring, coaching, and firing properly is to have a help mindset. So you're here to help. You're not here to judge. You're not here to punish. You're here to help them grow. And at some stage, if you find that the person is not going to work out, then you should help that person find something else that they will do better. One of the things I'm most, it's ironic, but I was very proud of early in my career is that I fired a marketing manager and she sent me a thank you letter shortly after firing her. And, usually it's not what you'd expect, right? Think, what bastard, but she wrote in the letter that she really appreciated that I tried everything I could to help her get to the job, and that she understands why the job was not right for her, right? Because and now she's moving into another direction. And ever since that, I've been focused on helping my employees and make sure that our managers help the employees and always do what's best in mind. Occasionally, you have to take shortcuts. When you hire a high-level executive, you have very little time to make things work. If things are not going to work, it's so detrimental that you have to move fast. So it may appear that I move too fast, but fundamentally, I always want what's best for the people I work with. And that framework of helping is in my view, the key aspect of leaders.
Yeah, which brings me to a question, because I know you require of your leaders to be the detail-oriented aspect of it, which is more so sometimes the manager function too, right? Like really managing the people and make sure that they're following through, like you said, the playbook or whatever that you built for them, that they're following that. But then that means that you, as the founder of the company or the senior leader, you kind of have to go away from the details and be more focused on the vision and the growth and the direction of the organization. So what are some practical ways how you, as a company grows in size and employee count, how do you kind of step away from some of that function and practically not, let things go loose?
Yeah, so first I should say that understanding the details is different from being involved in every detail. So that's a very key difference, right? I want to understand the details. I'll be able to know each aspect of things are done, but I don't need to get involved in every detailed decision. It actually is, like you pointed out, as you grow, you have to step away from these detailed decisions. So the way I do it is on a regular basis, I assess what the companies need the most, our company needs the most, right? So where are the critical things right now? So for a while it was sales. So I spent most of my time in sales, and we need to get that sales going. And once I started working and I could tell that it's repeatable, then I can step away from it. So that's how I do it. I still get involved in the details, but no longer in all the details, in only the details of the functions or departments that are critical at that stage for the next stage of success. So that I pick and choose. So I don't completely delegate everything to everybody. I just reassign my time to the places where I think it's most needed.
Mm-hmm. And obviously, you've at least the last two businesses you founded are around the productivity and efficiency and improving organizational efficiency and things of that nature, right? So I'm assuming you have an eye for being very extremely proficient and productive with the time. So are there any specific hacks that you have to kind of scale your time?
So it's the opposite. Mm-hmm. Actually, you give me credit where credit is not due. I found myself frustrated with my lack of productivity when I was growing Chili Piper. Mm-hmm. So I should mention that I've only recently understood that I have ADHD, attention deficit. It's kind of strange. I've gone through all my life with ADHD and only understood like 5 years ago. and so then it hit me that I could be way more productive. Mm-hmm. And I felt I needed a tool to be more productive. And I tried a million to-do lists, a million apps, a million things, and nothing worked. So crazily enough, as I was frustrated with my lack of time, I created another company to fix that problem. And that company is called KosmoTime. So what it is, it's a simple concept to start from, which is you only have one time, and KosmoTime, and you need to, if you want to be able to do some of the tasks that are in there, you need to block time for your task, and that's going to be happening in the calendar. So you need to. At first we actually integrated the calendar with to-do list, and they said actually it's the other way around. We need to integrate the to-do list in the calendar. So the core point is your calendar, where you decide how you're going to spend your time, and then you bring the ability to block time for task and manage your task and move tasks very easily from one time block to the other, depending on what you're able to do and not to do. So that's what this does. So back to your question, I'm actually a student of productivity. I wouldn't call myself a master, but I'm so motivated that I started a company and I'm working on it on an ongoing basis. So one of the key things I found now I'm applying is a few simple things. One of them is grouping meetings. So my Mondays are crazy. I started my first meeting at 9 a.m. My last meeting is at 6 p.m. and it's nonstop. Right? So now I'm even making interviews 15 minutes instead of 30 minutes. So I can have a block of 4 meetings in 1 hour, right? But they're all packed. And it turned out that context switching from one meeting to the other, especially if it's interviews, that is not so difficult, right? You move on, say, okay, here what do we talk about here? Sales, okay, it's sales. What about we're talking engineering? Your candidate. Then my Tuesdays and Thursdays are blocked for desk work, and I don't take meetings. Because when you have to work on something, if you know that the meeting coming in 30 minutes or in an hour, it's very difficult to focus and stay on there. So I block these times where I don't take meetings. And the concept of grouping meetings is actually something that's more and more popular, that people understand that it's a key to productivity. So that's the first thing, right? Block time for work and group all your meetings. The second piece is when you block time for work, you want to group your tasks that are most similar. for the same reason of avoiding context switching. So, for example, if I have a lot of documents to review for my team, I do a block called Docs Review, and right now I have 21 documents to review, but they're all together. So when I'm going to start, it's easy to go from one to the other because they have similar nature. So we're at the level of optimization where I'm trying to get in a flow, focus on the type of task and get them done quickly. So these are the two tricks that we've implemented at KosmoTime that are working really well for me. There's no question that I'm easily 3 times more productive now than I was 2 years ago. But then I look at Elon Musk and what he's capable of doing, and I'm thinking, okay, I still have a long way to go.
Yeah, and
I'm a student and then the master. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it also depends on the job function too, right? If you're in the leadership role, you have the luxury of having your meetings all combined into one day. But if you're in the sales role, your goal is to fill your whole day with meetings. So I think it really comes down to what your job function probably even require of you. But I think it's still the time blocking is super critical, because you can have a day full of meetings, but you can't follow through on what the meetings were. Then the meetings are useless, right? Because you should be able to send follow-up emails, create the opportunities, do whatever necessary to move the deals further, right? Those are all functions that a sales rep would have to do.
Exactly right. So sales still need to organize their time, even they like you pointed out, need to fill their calendars with meetings, because that's how you're going to sell, right? So by talking to people. So this at Chili Pepper, we handle it differently. So KosmoTime is mostly, you're right, for executives and busy professionals. Chili Pepper is focused on salespeople, and what we do is that we have the automation of buffers. So you have a time to prepare your meeting and a time to follow up on your meeting. And that's configurable, but it's built in. So it's designed to optimize how many meetings you take in the day, but still save time for the work that needs to happen. And I think it's a very critical part of the job of salespeople.
Most certainly. Well, obviously you've been an entrepreneur all your life, from early days of selling paper to now running multiple companies and multi-million-dollar organizations. So you've learned a lot in these years of being in business. What advice would you give your younger self, knowing what you know today?
The advice I would give is, there are two actually. One is to get started, and the other one is to get successful. The one to get started is something I heard from Steve Jobs. It's a beautiful quote. He said that one day he realized that everything around us was invented by other people, and what Steve Jobs says is that no smarter than you, right? So everything you see were invented by people. Maybe some people were smarter, but overall, a lot of people were about the same as smart as you. And when you think that, you think, well, I can change the world. I can invent things like that myself. So that was the thing that Steve Jobs said that a huge influence on me, this concept that even when I tried a new product, I'm thinking this was invented by somebody that had something in mind, so let me think how this person went about it. And the idea that you can do it yourself is a key part. And I wish I had known that earlier, because it took me a long time before I had the confidence to start something. And then the second piece is the power. So Warren Buffett is famous for his focus on the power of compounding, right? So you take an interest rate, like 10%, and 10% every year, it compounds and it ends up being huge. For entrepreneurs, I'm completely amazed by the power of iterating. So it doesn't work and you think you're dead, but you keep trying and you keep trying and you keep trying and you keep trying. And in the end, if you pay attention to feedback and what the market is telling you, and you keep trying and you keep trying, in the end, something's going to work. And that's something I think is not well understood, except for repeat entrepreneurs, right? So because it never worked the first time. And so when you're a repeat entrepreneur, you found out that you had to keep trying, keep iterating until you get there. But eventually, if you're flexible enough that your iterations move enough, right? So if you keep trying the same thing over and over again, it will not work. But if you move a little bit, eventually you're going to hit something where it's going to work, right? And so that power of iterating is very similar to the power of compounding, that you keep learning, and eventually it's going to happen. So that would be the advice I'd give myself. I look at early days as an entrepreneur, I was a little bit too black and white, right? I would just say, oh, it's working, oh, it's not working. But it doesn't work that way. You have to keep trying and keep trying and keep trying. And it's not working or not working. It's working somehow, right? Mm-hmm. And you have to keep going.
Well, I certainly enjoyed our time together. Thank you so much for sparing this afternoon with me and sharing some of your experience and wisdom with our audience. Thanks again, Nicolass.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Most certainly.
This episode of Coffee with Closers is brought to you by One IMS, a leading digital marketing agency helping businesses win new customers. To request a free marketing ROI audit, please visit oneims.com. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. To make sure you never miss an episode, please subscribe.